Let me tell you a story of a young girl born into a Kashmiri family. The only identity she lived for the longest period of her life was that she was fat. Growing up, she heard words like moti, bhaddi, words that stuck to her skin like unwelcome tattoos. Some labeled her chubby, others dismissed her as lazy, sloppy, and careless. No one realized how deeply these casual remarks wounded her. Each comment chipped away at her self-esteem until she wished she could disappear, fade in the background, where no one could see her, scrutinize her, or judge her. Years passed, and this young girl got married and saddled herself with the burden of becoming a good daughter-in-law, wife, and a mother. But marriage did not really free her from all the labels. In fact, it added some more to the list. With every passing day where she struggled to fit in, words and labels from others failed her. The stamps she was desperate to earn were eroding her self-esteem and self-worth. In the pursuit of becoming an ideal wife, daughter-in-law, and mother, she constantly demeaned herself. She was too harsh on herself. Most of the times, she assumed responsibility just to please others. And this pattern was triggered because of her own desire to be labeled a good homemaker. She tried her best to live up to the expectations of her family. She cooked, cleaned, took care of her children, and alongside the expected roles of caregiving, she continued pursuing her career. She tried to balance it all, but there was always something that would earn her a B in the report card. Then she became a mother. And with that new role came an even greater battle. The weight of expectations now crushed her as she struggled to navigate the exhaustion, the sleepless nights, the inexplicable sadness that clung to her despite the joy she was supposed to feel. She suffered from depression, an invisible wound that no one seemed to acknowledge. She wanted to nurse her firstborn child, to hold him close and provide the nourishment that he needed. But her body and mind refused to cooperate. Instead of support, she faced judgment. The whispers behind her back turned into pointed remarks. A real mother wouldn't do that. घर बैठे, नौकरी छोड़े, बच्चा संभाले, कैसी माँ है, नर्स नहीं कर सकती अपने बच्चे को? Every glance, every comment, every well-meaning suggestion felt like an accusation. And the worst part, she believed them. What hurt the most was that she believed them all. She let those labels define her. She carried the guilt, the shame, and the burden of proving her worth every single day. She tried her best to be the perfect wife, the ideal daughter-in-law, the doting mother. But no matter how hard she tried, something was always lacking. No matter how much she gave, she was never enough. At one point, she was labeled ladaki, too argumentative, too headstrong, too unwilling to quietly accept what was expected of her. She was difficult for speaking up, disrespectful for questioning norms, intimidating for holding her ground. Every time she voiced her thoughts, she was met with disapproving glances, sighs of exasperation, and warnings to stay in the place. The world made her feel as though her strong opinions were a flaw. something to be tamed rather than embraced. She was expected to shrink, to soften her voice, to nod along instead of challenging what she knew was wrong. His support did not come in grand gestures or sweeping declarations. It was in the way he stepped in when she felt overwhelmed, in how he reminded her that she didn't really have to do it all alone. He did not try to fix her struggles or dismiss her pain. He simply stood beside her, offering her space and the reassurance she needed to reclaim herself. And that made all the difference. Today, that girl is a woman in her 40s, and she has evolved. She has transitioned from a timid, confused girl into a strong, fearless woman. She owns her decisions, she embraces her mistakes, and she no longer seeks validation from those who never saw her worth to begin with. But here's the irony. The woman who fought against all labels all her life found herself guilty of labeling her own children. This young woman, who had spent years suffocating under the weight of labels, unknowingly handed the same burden to her children. She had fought so hard against the world's expectations, yet when it came to her own kids, she fell into the same cycle. Like a typical South Asian mother, her obsession with straight A's was borderline unhealthy. She measured their success in report cards, convinced that anything less than perfection was a step towards failure. Her constant reminders to focus on studies and not waste time echoed through the house like a broken record. The boys, on the other hand, just wanted to breathe. She also had this unshakable idea that boys have to be tough, that they had to run, jump, sweat, and dominate the field. So she pushed them towards sports, hoping to mold them into the strong, competitive young men the world seemed to demand. But these boys, they weren't interested. They didn't want to dribble a ball or sprint across a field. And when they resisted, she did not just feel disappointed, she labeled them lazy, unmotivated, couch potato, ambitionless, maybe even a loser on a bad day. She did not realize it then, but she was doing to them what had been done to her, boxing them in, making them feel like they had to earn their worth. And in the process, she was turning into the very thing she once despised. Luckily, her kids have grown up to be smart, empathetic young boys. But I'm sure she put them through repeated implicit wounding that triggered their extreme survival mechanisms. She never meant to harm them, but the weight of her expectations, the constant need to shape them into something more, left its mark in ways she could not fully see. Instead of letting them be, she tried steering them all along, nudging, pushing, sometimes outright dragging them towards what she thought was the right path. She mistook guidance for control, believing she was helping them when in reality she was suffocating them. Instead of recognizing their unique strengths, she worried about the qualities they lacked. Instead of celebrating their goodness and empathy, she would often complain of their docility. Why don't you stand up for yourself? मर्द बनो, लड़के रोते नहीं हैं, कैसे लड़के हो? हर वक्त अम्मा के पास आ जाते हो? The world will eat you alive unless you roughen up a bit. She saw their kindness and worried it would make them weak, that their gentleness would be mistaken for vulnerability. She wanted them to be bold, assertive, commanding, qualities she had been forced to develop for survival. What she did not realize was that they were already strong, just in a different way. a way she had yet to fully understand. Instead of being super proud of their giving and charitable nature, she would often worry over the fact that they weren't tough enough to knock anyone down. Instead of appreciating and celebrating their individuality, she wanted to mold them according to the prevalent idea of masculinity, the kind that thrives on dominance, resilience, and an unshaken exterior. She nudged them towards sports they didn't enjoy, towards mannerisms they felt foreign to them, towards a version of manhood that did not sit right in their bones. She did not realize that in trying to shield them from the world's harshness, she was stifling their true selves. What she did not realize was that she was repeating the same mistake that her family had made. The very cycle she had fought so hard to break, she had unknowingly continued. She had spent years trying to unlearn the labels imposed on her. Yet, there she was, handing out new ones, shaping her sons under the same rigid expectations that had once suffocated her. This woman, who was once the victim and then the perpetrator, is standing right here in front of you. It is myself, Zubda, owning her mistakes, breaking the pattern, learning, unlearning, and choosing every single day to let go of the labels that once defined her and to never impose them on those she loves. Time for some more confessions. Yes, I'm guilty of putting undue pressure on my boys. I am guilty of trying to put them in different boxes. I am guilty of being toxic and repressive. I am guilty of imposing expectations that were never theirs to carry, of measuring their worth through standards that were never meant for them. I am guilty of failing to see that in any attempt to shape them, I was unknowingly restricting them. But what's different is that I am owning to my mistake. I'm not running away from it. I'm not justifying it. I'm not brushing it under the rug. I'm standing here, right before you, acknowledging the weight of my actions. I'm learning to unlearn some toxic behavioral patterns that I had internalized during my journey. I'm actively peeling away the layers of conditioning that led me to believe that love comes with control, that strength is built through rigidity, that conformity is the price of acceptance. I'm choosing to step back, to reflect, to dismantle the very habits I once thought were acts of care. I'm realizing that love is not about molding someone into an ideal, but about giving them the space to become who they truly are. And that unlearning is just as important, if not more, than everything I have ever been taught. I'm trying to learn every day how to be a better parent, a better wife, a better human being. And at this stage of my life, I'm doing it solely for myself. Not to fit into an expectation, not to earn anyone's approval, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I owe it to myself. Because growth is a choice, and I choose to evolve. Interestingly, when I stopped labeling myself, I realized others backed off too. Primarily because they realized that their judgments, expectations, and labels could no longer affect me. It wasn't that the world suddenly changed or became kinder overnight. It was that I had changed. I no longer gave power to the words that once defined me. I no longer sought validation in places that only drained me. When people saw that their opinions no longer dictated my self-worth, they stopped offering them so freely. Their labels lost their grip on me the moment I refused to wear them. What I realized was that when I started being kind to myself, others showed kindness to me. It was as if the energy I put into the world reflected right back at me. The more I forgave myself, the more others forgave me. The more I accepted myself, the more acceptance I received. The world did not need to change. I did. And in that shift, I found the peace I had been searching for all along. So what I've learned from my journey is that we should not let labels define us. Labels that we put on ourselves or that others put on us just pull us down. They stick to us like stubborn stains, draining us of our energy and positivity. Having said that, the fact is that we all judge and we all label others. It's a reality. No matter how much we try to deny it, we do it. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. We assign meaning to people's choices, their failures, their successes, their struggles, without even knowing their full story. We create narratives based on half-truths, assumptions, and what we think we know. What's important is how we learn to deal with it. Because let's be real, लोग बोलते हैं, लोगों का काम है बोलना, वो बोलते रहेंगे. They will always have opinions. They will always have something to say. But what truly matters is whether we let those words dictate our lives. Whether we let them take up space in our minds rent-free. Whether we allow them to shape how we see ourselves. We all can help each other by just being conscious with our words, by pausing before we speak, by realizing that a single comment, something we might say casually and forget in a second, can stick with someone for years. We all have wounds from words spoken carelessly. We all carry the weight of labels we never asked for. So why not break the cycle? We can help each other by understanding that not everything needs our commentary or approval. That not every situation needs to be analyzed, dissected, and gossiped about. Life is hard enough without unnecessary scrutiny. We can help each other by not making assumptions about why a marriage ended in a divorce. अभी तक शादी नहीं हुई, अभी तक बच्चा नहीं हुआ, हाय हाय बेवा होके ऐसे रंग पहनती है. ये वो सब बातें हैं जो हम सुनते रहते हैं, जो मैंने भी सुनी हैं अपनी फ्रेंड्स के बारे में, अपनी फैमिली के बारे में. We act like we need to know the reasons behind every life choice, every deviation from the so-called norm. But the truth is, we don't. We don't need to have opinions on things that don't concern us. We don't need to assign blame or pity when none is needed. We just need to learn to let everyone be, to let people live on their own terms, make their own mistakes, find their own happiness without interference, without your judgment, without unsolicited advice. We just need to learn how to throw away the baggage of our past and worries of the future and live in the moment. Because at the end of the day, that's all we really have, the present. And the more time we waste obsessing over what people think or what went wrong or what might happen, the more we miss out on what's actually unfolding in front of us. We need to understand and internalize that we're programmed to make mistakes because we're only humans after all. Mistakes are not the end of the world. They're part of the process. We trip, we fall, we mess up, and that's how we grow. Yet, instead of embracing this truth, we act as if perfection is the goal, as if failing at something means we are failing at life. But the reality is, mistakes are proof that we tried, that we stepped out of our comfort zones, that we dared to do something different. We need to learn to wear our mistakes like medals because they define the trajectory of our lives. Every mistake carries a lesson, and every lesson adds another layer to who we are. If we were to erase every failure, every misstep, we would not be left with a perfect version of ourselves. We'd be left with nothing at all. Isn't it ironic that everyone is unique, but we categorize them as per generic stereotypes and labels? We celebrate individuality in theory, but in practice we box people into categories, stripping them of their essence. It is criminal. It is criminal to take away someone's right to define themselves, to tell someone that they're not too much or not enough based on outdated, rigid stereotypes, to reduce people to a label instead of seeing them as layered, evolving human beings. At the end of the day, we all just want to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted of for who we truly are, not for who the world thinks we should be. Everyone has their own journey, their own sets of problems and challenges. No two lives are the same. No two experiences are identical. So how can we allow stereotypes to rob us of our individual uniqueness? How can we let societal expectations dictate who we are supposed to be? How can we keep forcing people to fit into predefined roles instead of letting them carve their own paths? You hold the power to break cycles, to challenge norms, to redefine what is possible. So stand tall in your truth, own your story, embrace your imperfections, celebrate your individuality, because real change starts with you. Unapologetically, authentically, and fearlessly you. Thank you.